Secrets of Sunken Ships. In the coastal village of Lunenburg, on the coast of Nova Scotia, life flowed smoothly. Fishermen went out to sea every morning, old men sat by the pier with pipes, and tourists took pictures of colorful wooden houses. No one talked about the fact that sometimes at night in the bay there was a dull, as if stuck in the centuries, the sound of a ship's bell. Those who heard preferred to remain silent. This meant that he was coming back. Alice Hunter, the widow of a naval officer, moved to Lunenburg after her husband's death. Her husband, Captain William Hunter, went to sea in 2009 and never returned. His ship, a research vessel, disappeared in the area where the famous Arcturus, a British battleship that participated in a secret expedition, disappeared at the beginning of the 20th century. Alice was left alone with his diaries, which described fragments of the Arcturus route, strange sightings, and mentions of a sarcophagus lifted from the ocean floor. 15 years later, in March 2025, the Coast Guard recorded a weak distress signal in the North Atlantic. The call sign was outdated, a code from the early 20th century that had previously belonged to Arcturus. The signal came from coordinates that are marked as abnormal waters on modern maps. Judging by the transmission frequency, it wasn't just active. It had just started transmitting. Alice, who studied marine anomalies and navigation chronicles, recognized the signal instantly. She showed the data to oceanographers from Halifax, and within a week, it was decided to organize an expedition. The modern research vessel Triton went to sea, and Alice, with the support of her husband's foundation, received an observer position. There were 28 people on board, including Captain Walter Sloan, an experienced sailor with 20 years of experience. Triton had everything: drones, bathyscaphs, deep-sea cameras, laser scanners. 5 days later, they reached a point, an unremarkable area where echo sounders showed emptiness. But at dawn on the 7th day, a response came from the depths. The silhouette of a sunken ship appeared on the screens. The hull is destroyed. The masts are half broken. The wheelhouse is twisted. However, that wasn't the main thing. There was someone standing on the bow of the ship. The camera zoomed in and focused until the figure became clear. A man in an antique Navy uniform, with faded shoulder straps and a shapeless face. The next second, communication with the drone was lost. All the instruments on the Triton began to malfunction. The water temperature was changing every minute. The compass needles were spinning, and distorted voices sounded in the crew's headphones, as if they were transmitted from records of the beginning of the last century. "It's not a technical glitch," Nick, one of the young technicians, whispered. "He's calling us. He knows we're here." Nick began to behave strangely. He claimed to remember walking on the deck of the Arcturus even though he was born in 2001. His hands were shaking, and he refused to sleep. On the third night, he disappeared. The cameras recorded how he got up, went down to the deck, and stepped overboard. The waters were calm, but the body disappeared without a trace. At that moment, a new message appeared on the screen of one of the operators. "Open the sarcophagus. The time has come." Secrets of Sunken Ships. From a depth of 4 kilometers, the drone managed to locate the sarcophagus. He was lying in the hold of the Arcturus, covered with silt, wrapped in chains and nets. Its shape was almost anatomical, as if someone had created a container, not for a dead body, but for a living being in need of peace and quiet. After much debate, Captain Sloan allowed the sarcophagus to be brought aboard. It weighed over a ton. As the lifting mechanism pulled him to the surface, turbidity rose from the depths like smoke from the abyss. The waters darkened. The cameras began to show not only the Arcturus, but also other ships. Their hulls loomed against the background of the bottom mud, like a giant graveyard of ships. Among them were Spanish galleon with crucified masts, a World War II submarine, wooden frames of Viking ships, and even a half-crumbled airship, as if embedded in the ocean sand. When the sarcophagus was brought on deck, there was a deathly silence. The material of the lid seemed alive. It pulsed under the spotlight. Alice came up first. Her hands were shaking, but she felt she had to do it. Everything that happened to her, her husband's death, the diaries, that signal, was connected to that moment. With a sharp click, the lid opened. There was a creature inside. His skin was moist and gray like a deep-sea fish with slime-covered folds. The facial features are semi-childish, with a bulging forehead and huge eyes without pupils. Instead of arms, there were flexible tentacles, each with tiny mouths whispering in an incomprehensible language. Everyone froze. And then the sea surface began to move. A huge column of water rose straight from the depths, as if the abyss itself was sighing. A lot of objects appeared on the radar. Some were moving, and they were moving fast, straight toward them. The ship began to shake. The devices are turned off. A voice came from the deck speakers, the one from the Arcturus. He spoke in English, but his voice sounded like it had been through 100 years of suffering. "The sea is our home. He's coming back. Everyone who died in him is his flesh. He will awaken through us." The crew members started to go crazy. Several rushed into the water. One of the cameramen, who was standing closest to the sarcophagus, suddenly began to become covered with marine scales, and his skin became translucent. Alice, trembling, shouted to the captain, "We have to get him back! We have raised up a god who was buried not by people but by the sea." But it was too late. The ship shuddered. In the sky, despite the night, a strip of light opened up. A narrow, deathly mouth through which the ancient came out into the world. Everything began to distort. The deck lengthened, the water rose up, as if in slow motion. Creatures from the depths began to swim out. They were tall, elongated, with black, empty eye sockets. They weren't attacking. They were just watching. Alice grabbed her husband's diary at the last moment and screamed. It was an expedition not for the truth, but for the verdict. Communication with the Triton was lost on the same day. 10 days later, a wooden dinghy with the inscription Arcturus, and a diary inside of which was the last entry in Alice's hand, washed up off the coast of Lunenburg. "He's not dead. He was imprisoned, and we freed him. And now all the waters of the world are his body. The sea has become reasonable. It remembers us all." Since then, in the coastal villages of Canada, they say that silhouettes of ancient ships appear in the fog at night, and if you hear a dull bell, do not turn around. Otherwise, you'll go back to a place where no one ever comes back from.